Historic year here on Capitol Hill, from the longest government shutdown on record to the most discharge petitions in a single year to try and circumvent Republican leadership in the House. So we asked members of Congress before they left for their winter break to describe this past year in one word, and their answers may surprise you. To describe this past year in Congress in one word and why.
Wow. I'd say like, wow. I've never seen such uselessness. Wow.
Progress. I think we made a lot of progress on the economic front. I think we're trying to reverse a lot of the Biden era changes that were made. A lot of spending that was unnecessary, and I think we're changing that.
Dysfunction.
Stupidity. I don't know. I mean, we went through this last 8 weeks has been very frustrating for many of us. We went through 6 weeks of a completely nonsensical government shutdown.
Fascinating. It's been fascinating to see all of the capitulation, duplicity, and hypocrisy coming out of this Republican conference.
Progress. We've made progress. Borders shut. Inflation's down. Gas prices are down. No tax on tips. We're returning power back to the people.
I can't say the word that I want to use, but I will just say it's been a crap show, and you could kind of fill in the blank.
Typical. This place is designed for failure. It's designed not to do anything, either party. The sewer maintains it, and the people that play the game with the sewer, they get rewarded.
Failure. I mean, what have we done for the American people? I mean, this is the least productive Congress, only to be compared to the last Congress, which was the least productive Congress. I mean, you know, this Congress has let the American people down.
I'd say deliberate.
And for our office, very productive. That's 2 words: productive.
Yeah. I mean, I had a little pause there. Sorry about that. I'm solo. Do you guys notice the difference between the two parties? Like, it seemed like the Democrats were saying that it's not been a very effective Congress, but the Republicans were saying, and I had to end there on Derek Van Orden saying, "Oh, well, productive progress. It's been great." They haven't done shit. You know, to see Ralph Norman say, "Oh, progress. Like we've returned power to the people." If doing nothing is returning power to the people, then yeah, they've returned power to the people. But the fact is, this Congress has been historically failure. You know, if you know me and you follow me, I call this, you know, I'm from Missouri, as you guys know, and our famous son, Harry Truman, said it best. He said, Harry Truman in 1949 had the Republican do nothing Congress. Well, what we have is what I call the Republican Doormat Congress. And it's historically bad. You know, the fact is we lament Donald Trump a lot here on Midas Touch Network and on my show and amongst us Democrats, but we have to talk about the failure of the United States Congress as a whole at this moment. And at this moment is because, congratulations, folks, we made it to 2026. It is January 2nd, 2026. It is now the election year. Okay, we are now facing, the midterms in 11 months. And we're seeing the culmination of years of giving away Congress's power to the executive branch and the leadership of their parties to the point where there's almost no even point in being in Washington. You know, the job is just a rubber stamp where they're handed, where the leadership of the president hands it. And look, if you're a MAGA supporter, maybe you're hate watching this show. I'm glad to have you, and maybe you're watching to find out who I am because the other thing I'm doing. You should be angry as hell too. Look, Congress is so weak and feckless. They can't help you either. They're not helping anyone right now. Okay? We have a completely useless group of people sitting on the Hill. And now what are they doing? A right-wing influencer has done some really manipulated videos where he tried to barge his way into daycares. Like, I'm sorry, folks. If I'm paying for daycare and some dude tries to barge his way in, you're damn right I want them to block him. I don't want my kids filmed by some nut job. And so now the entire Congress, the entire right-wing machine has turned its way to Minnesota voter fraud, to the point where they have the audacity to cut off all daycare funding in the United States just to check on things. And where's Congress? Well, either they're quiet or they're going along with it. So this week I'm solo. I know I haven't done that in a while, but this is a solo show. And we're going to talk about Congress, what they're supposed to do, what they're not doing right now, and why we need to dedicate ourselves in this year, this election year, to change it. We have no choice, ladies and gentlemen. We must make a difference. So we're going to make the case, have some examples, have a conversation. I'll be in the chat. So let's talk about what's going on in Congress. Let's get it going. As you guys know, I am Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy with FP Wellman right here on the Midas Touch Network every Friday night. Let's go on to the show. Welcome, 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 welcome. Got my 101st. Got my 101st mug on here. Great Screaming Eagles. I'm going to need it. Yeah. Georgia. I actually flew that aircraft in the 101st Airborne. So that's enough of that. So here we are. As I mentioned, I'm flying solo, so bear with me. It is an exciting time. I got good news, you guys. Next week, intern Satchel rejoins the show. We're great to have him back. I'm excited. As I said before the break, I am Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy with FP Wellman. I'm just terribly excited to be here with you guys. We were talking before the intro about how Congress is failing us and that it's an election year. Midterms are just 11 months away. We have a chance to change that. Look, I'm going to put aside the fears of there no being an election. You guys know me well enough by now. No, I'm not beholden to those fears, if you will, that the Congress is, that we're not going to have an election and I just won't do it. It's not who I am. So let's just assume there's an election in 11 months because there's going to be, and a lot of us are going to fight and make sure it happens. So we will have an election. But let's talk about how ineffectual this Congress truly is. And I've actually got some numbers. We'll talk about how they've given away their power and how little they think of all of us this time. Because for me, the final point I want to make always, and I do a lot in my day job, is they just disrespect us. They don't know who we are. They don't care who we are, and they don't represent who we are. And I think it's time we had that conversation too, because that matters, folks. And if you see in this conversation, this show today, how that infects everything Congress is doing from the very beginning of what they think about us, what they care, what they talk about, what they care about. So despite Republican majorities in the House and the Senate, only 61 bills passed both chambers this year, according to Congress.gov. Of those, 22 were disapproval resolutions overturning Biden administration rules and regulations. 2 others were bills naming federal buildings, a post office in Oklahoma and a outpatient clinic for the VA in New Jersey. That's it. So 61 bills total passed the House and the Senate that went to Trump. I want you to 22. Let's do. I'm not a math guy, as you guys know. 21, 40, 39. What is that? 37 bills actually passed into law. That makes it the most ineffectual history. In fact, as Washington Post Paul Kane noted, the House has set a 21st century record for the fewest votes cast. That's 362 in the first session of a 2-year Congress. And Johnson so frequently repossessed the House early when faced with any kind of pushback from his caucus. He opted to just keep 43-day long government shutdown. He just kept the House closed that whole time. Meanwhile, the Senate has been spending most of its time in the session this year almost exclusively on passing Trump's nominees than producing any original legislation. Let's compare those statistics. So this is historic. Where should we compare it to? Biden, Bush, Clinton? I don't know. How about the first Trump administration in 2017? House Speaker Paul Ryan, and of course then Senate Leader Mitch McConnell. Boy, sounds like a halcyon day, and that was just a few years ago. Were the 2 points of the 2 leadership points of Republican leadership trifecta? Trump, McConnell, Ryan. Those 2 GOP lawmakers got 97 bills at Trump's desk that year. 15 of those were resolutions disapproving Obama administration rules and 3 named federal buildings. By the end of the 115th Congress, a year later, they passed 344 pieces of legislation had been enacted. I can't imagine a situation where that picks up in this administration. And that's on top of the fact we already know that the last Congress under Mike Johnson was actually the most ineffectual in history. So they haven't changed a single bit with Trump being in office. So they blamed it being Biden as the president for the last Congress being ineffectual. And now we're in the new one where they actually hold all the reins of power and yet haven't done stuff, okay? Haven't accomplished things for the American people. And so let's talk about what that looks like. Let's talk about oversight. Something I talk about a lot is the job of oversight. Let's talk, for example, here's an example, the renaming of things by Trump, okay? Or the Department of War, the Kennedy Center, the unauthorized destruction of the East Wing, for example, or any myriad of things that Trump has done without any oversight from Congress. So where does that come from? Where's Congress's power come on that? Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 is the necessary and proper clause. Let's see what it says. To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by the Constitution, blah, blah, blah. This clause gives Congress the implied power, we call it, to investigate and ensure laws are executed. And the Supreme Court interpreted that just that way. It consistently held the power of investigation is inherent in Congress's legislative role, essential for creating and overseeing laws, and flows from Article 1. The Congress, which is the co-equal branch of government. Article 1 is first. Congress is the first branch of government laid out by our leaders if you want to talk about the founding fathers, right? Okay, they laid it out that the Congress has the power. So Congress authority oversees executive isn't explicitly written, but is understood as fundamental to its power to legislate and appropriate funds. And that's where it gets tricky, right? So let's have a recent example of appropriation of funds. We talked last week about veterans issues, right? If you remember. And one of the things that's just come up recently is that Trump announced he's going to give, remember the warrior bonus, right? The warrior bonus. He gave a $1,776 bonus to every single U.S. service member. Hey, look, we all love the troops. I'm a troop. I raised a troop or two. My dad was a troop. We love the troops. But that money, so here's the interesting part. That money was a long sought after change by veteran service organizations to make sure that soldiers and service members of all times and their families were paid for 100% of the cost of their rent and their housing costs when stationed in expensive parts of the country. It's called Basic Allowance for Housing, BAH. So that's right. So as part of your benefits as a service member, because you get no choice where you live, be it barracks in Hawaii or a house in Seattle. When you're stationed somewhere, Fargo in North Dakota, God bless the Air Force, you don't get a vote in that. You get sent there. So you can't deal. You may not have the budget to live in those places. Unlike some people, like a civilian, I could say, hey, look, I can't afford to move to Boston right now. I'm not going to take a job there. It's not that way in the military. So we, as part of our benefits, get basic allowance for housing. So after fighting for years to get it in the NDAA, the Defense Authorization, it failed to get it because Congress isn't doing their job. What happened was the Senate and the Congress put in $2.9 billion into that one big billionaire bill, right? The big billionaire bill. And in that $2.9 billion, that it was earmarked to the Department of Defense. Now, because it wasn't the NDAA, they couldn't say this is for housing, but they actually wrote a letter to DOD saying, hey, this money is intended to pay 100% of service members' housing costs. But because it wasn't earmarked, Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump simply took $2.6 billion of that money and pointed it at a bonus for every service member. So you think, well, Fred, they got $1,700. That's great. Sure, if you didn't need it. But if you live in Seattle and you're only getting enough money to pay for 70% of your housing, you needed that money throughout the year as part of your monthly paycheck. So while he may have given money to the kid living in the barracks of Fort Benning, who's got gobs of money because he's not living for anything cheap, you just screwed a ton of service members. And obviously Congress is going to be upset about that, right? Nope. Not a word. They haven't launched any investigations. You haven't seen any complaining. What you've seen is no oversight of this decision. And again, we see this where they're breaking the law and they do nothing to stop it. Trump doesn't respect this Congress, and this Congress doesn't respect themselves. The Republican Doormat Congress is simply not doing any work. And that's how it works. They simply break the law and they get a break. Nobody says a word. And so we see again and again that the job of oversight by this Congress is not occurring. That goes back to shutting down the House for 43 days. What could have been happening during that 43 days? Well, it should have been investigations. It should have been oversight of everything. They didn't. They sent him home. And again, we see this doormat Congress has no interest in making American lives better. They just make it worse. Let's do a sponsor break. Or come back and let's talk trade, because actually our sponsor has something to do with that. I'm Fred Wellman. This is On Democracy. We'll be right back. Starting a business is very hard. You're going through everything with like finding out your logo, building your website, getting your point of sale set up, your inventory, supply chains these days. Don't get me started about that. When my family started a business 12 years ago in a small town, Virginia, that was one of the big challenges we had. How do we find a point of sale that works? How do we run an online store? How does it all integrate with our social media channels and everything else? And we were just glad we finally found a partner that works so well for us. And that's where Shopify comes in. Shopify is a commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and it's 10% of all e-commerce just in the US alone, from household names that like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started, or brands you should know like Sugar and Spruce in Fredericksburg, Virginia. You can get started your own design studio with hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand's style. Now, you start your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography for you. You can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns whenever your customers are scrolling or strolling, and it integrates directly into your point of sale system. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. So if you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. So that's where we come in. Turn your big business idea into, that's right. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Fred. That's go to shopify.com/Fred. One more time for those at home, shopify.com/Fred. You can start your business now and grow it successfully. All right. We're back. So let's talk trade, right? That's the next big issue, right? Is the Congress has power so tariffs is the best way for us to tell us, right? The tariff situation is the best example I could come up with of how Congress has failed after years of giving away more of their power. They finally gave it all away. So this Congress, the 119th Congress, has truly given away their power over the purse. Okay. As Trump's tariffs right now, it's a guessing game. It's made the entire economy basically a guessing game of what Trump's mood is going to be that day. What's he mad about? Who he got mad about? What he saw on Fox News about a foreign country saying bad things about him. The next day, there's 100% tariff on random shit because that's what was done. Congress has no vote in the matter anymore because they gave up their power of veto over this, their power from the country. So President's based his So let's talk about a little bit. We'll get a little technical. You guys are used to it. The basis for Trump's tariffs is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEEPA. I mean, folks, I don't know why anybody wants this job in Congress, but here we are. The IEEPA allows the president to deal with any unusual and extraordinary threat coming from outside the United States. Upon a declaration of a national emergency, the president can investigate, regulate, or prohibit, among other broad powers, any transactions in which a foreign country or national has an interest. Accordingly, President Trump, of course, has found his perfect way to do things. He decided that trade deficits were a lack of reciprocal trade has allowed him to call that an emergency. That because China buys more shit from us than we buy from China, that's a national emergency. That's like every joke that you see on the internet, every joke's about like, hey, I'm in a trade deficit with my barber shop because I give him, $30 and all I get is a haircut, right? So I'm not going to pay him anymore. Trade deficits are not a national emergency, okay? You don't like to have a trade deficit, but the fact is we are getting things from these foreign countries. We get trade. That's the point. I buy something and they give me something back, okay? We're not just sending money overseas. So he decided that's a national emergency. Now, the constitutional power says that Congress has that power. Article 1, there it is again, folks, Article 1. Article 1, Section 8 grants Congress the power to, quote, lay and collect duties, imports, imposts, and excises. I love 1700 speak, okay? Tariffs originate with Congress. That's what that means. Article 1, Section 8. So Congress but here's the problem, though. Congress has been delegating their authority for years. And they've passed laws like the 1934 Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act, which the president authorized the president to negotiate trade deals and adjust tariffs up to 50% without congressional approval. So listen to that very carefully. The 1934 Reciprocal Trade Act said the president has the power to negotiate trade. That's where the whole idea of doing trade agreements with foreign countries comes from, if you've always wondered. Okay. 1934. So he could do a trade agreement, but he could adjust up to 50%. Now, you guys, unless you've been asleep for the last 6 months, 9 months, Trump doesn't do up to 50%, 100%, 125% on China, impossible numbers. Okay. He's been doing that. Now, Congress could reclaim that authority, but they don't feel like it, right? All of these things are within the possibility of this Congress to go up there and do hard things and reclaim that power, but they're afraid. They could amend those laws. They could require joint resolutions for tariffs. They could terminate the national emergency if they use, by the way, we had a whole show on that this year. They could terminate them and get rid of these national emergencies. And it's a joint, it literally is what it's a joint resolution could terminate a national emergency. I'm sure the Democrats would go along with that, but no Republican has the courage to field that and ask for the termination of these national emergencies. And business groups are screaming for this. Average Americans are screaming for this, but it's not happening because Congress has completely given away their power to Trump. So that's where we sit, okay? We sit in a place where Trump has all the power and Congress is just sitting there. And that's why you see so many members of Congress just leaving. I mean, you've heard it. Even the Republicans, just listen to their voice, what they're saying. What's the point of being here if my only job is to do what Trump says or the leader of my party says? In the old days, they would put a bill in a committee would review it. Remember the process, the legislative process. John Thune came into office promising proper legislative process, and it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. And look, they're going to blame the other party. Maybe there's a point to that. Maybe we should send people to Congress who want to do regular order. I know it doesn't sound sexy, guys, but when you're looking at your candidates this year, maybe you should hear that word regular order and go, oh, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see it. The perfect other example is my favorite, very, very, very favorite one, of course, is when they talked about the extending the budget, right? The joint, the CRA, right? Continuing resolution. My member of Congress said that she had done her job. She passed the continuing resolution. No, you didn't do your job. Your job's to pass a budget annually, but you didn't. You passed a continuing resolution. A continuing resolution by nature is a failure to do your job. And the fact that this Congress, the 119th Congress, led by Mike Johnson and John Thune, the Republican Congress, thinks that a continuing resolution is doing their job, tells you exactly how much of a failure they are. Okay? That's not success. Okay? A continuing resolution is a failure. And that's what they think is success at this point. And so we have to have a conversation about that. But let's think the last thing. Okay? And this is one that I am very passionate about. It's the disrespect. Okay? And I think as you go into the election year, folks, I want you to look at your member of Congress and see the disrespect they have for us as humans, as Americans. For me, the final straw of all of this, okay, was last July, late June, July. Okay, so I'm going to set a picture for you, okay? So you guys, let's flash back to June of last year. And you may remember they were debating. The Senate at that point had gotten the big billionaire bill from the House. And they were staying in session through the weekend at the end of June. They were supposed to go for the summer, of course, because God forbid they should stay in Washington. And they were debating that the House hadn't taken enough money away from SNAP, that the House hadn't taken enough money away from Medicare and Medicaid, right? That's the truth, right? Do you guys remember what the other side is? So let's imagine a split screen. Do you guys remember what the other side of the screen was? Let me show you. Yeah. So that's June 29th. It's the same time that our members of Congress were debating how much money to take away from our budget. The good people were in Venice So as the American Senate and the American Congress was debating how much money to strip, how much healthcare to strip, how much food, nutrition assistance to strip from working Americans, the billionaires bought Venice. And that to me was the final straw for me. If you remember the conversation, I'm not going to show the video because I hate it so much. There's videos of it. But if you remember, one of the key talking points the Republicans used at that point was these 27-year-old men who were laying around playing video games lazily on couches getting free healthcare. And why did I lose my temper that weekend? Because at the time, I was the father of a 27-year-old man who at that time, or before, was a bartender, full-time bartender in a really good restaurant. That restaurant didn't offer healthcare. So instead, they offered a stipend, a couple $100. And my son, in October of that previous year, which is now a year and a half ago, when the ACA window opened, he and I got him an ACA exchange in his state and looked into getting him Obamacare help. Good stuff. Found out, did his cost calculation, put in all of his numbers for his tax and his income, and he qualified for Medicaid as a full-time working bartender in a very popular restaurant in his town. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't laying around playing video games. He had a shoulder injury from repetitive motion of making cocktails. Okay? But to see it, if you see the Republicans on TV, we've got lazy men getting free healthcare. Because as you know, every 27-year-old, they dream of having free healthcare. That's the only thing they're looking for. Not money, just that free healthcare from the government, right? And you and I know that's bullshit because, again, at the same time we were debating this, they were celebrating this. A billionaire buying a town, okay? And that's what shocks me. So let's talk. So now we're at the point now. It's January 2026. All those things they did back in July have come home to roost. And the disrespect continues. Here's Ron Johnson in October.
I don't think this is going to be any kind of gut-wrenching problem if these enhanced subsidies just go away. We will probably have to weather the lies told by the Democrats. But again, we're happy to work with Democrats and fix the broken Obamacare.
Millions of people are going to die. They said millions of people will die if these subsidies aren't renewed, enhanced.
They said Democrats say all kinds of things that aren't true. I mean, I got that. And it does scare people because a lot of people in the legacy media carry their water, amplify their falsehoods. I got that. That scares a lot of Republicans as well. It doesn't scare me. I'm just looking at the reality situation. We need to describe the reality, which is what I'm trying to do on this show.
It does scare him because he's a multimillionaire. He's a multimillionaire. Okay? It's scaring a lot of people. Look, you just open the newspaper and you see the story. Here in Missouri, there's a story recently I showed a couple weeks ago on the show of a woman who is in the middle of cancer treatment. Her health care is going to go from $286 a month to $1,200 a month. Okay? Oh, it scares Republicans too. The media isn't scaring us. The goddamn bills we're getting is scaring us. Okay? But Ron Johnson's a millionaire. Of course, he's not scared. That was in October. Hey, how about recently? Here's Dan Crenshaw. Watch to the end.
America, your premiums are not going up because these tax credits are expiring. They affect very, very few people. And to the extent that they even affect them, you're talking about 4% of the actual increase. So let's make that fact very, very clear for people as Democrats lie to the American people about what these temporary premium tax credits were. They were COVID related. They go straight to insurance companies. They don't go to you, the patient. Mike is right that we need a deal or a shutdown. I can only speak for how I want that deal to go and what I've been working on. You can say it very succinctly. Fundamentally, the ACA, Obamacare, pushes subsidies, taxpayer money into the insurance companies' pockets.
Right.
And then it says to the insurance companies, hey, remove all the price transparency that you would normally have in a market and just tell people that it's free. That's a really weird way to do something. That's like giving a grocery store subsidies and telling them to remove all the prices and just give food away to the poor. No, you give the poor vouchers, and so we want to put that money into health savings accounts. Yeah, you use existing mechanisms and actually put the money and the power back into the patient's hands. That's the fundamentals of a deal that needs to be made.
There's so much work to be done at Congress.
Okay, so yeah, you give the poor vouchers. I think he's talking about SNAP benefits in that case, but let's just say, in theory, he's talking about people who also are on Obamacare, the ACA, or even Medicare. It's not the poor, okay? 67% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Majority of people are now working in jobs that don't even offer health care. Union membership is down. The places we normally got health care for hundreds of years, decades, if you will, like decades of years, are gone. That's what was the revelation of the ACA 15 years ago. It wasn't who got the money and how it was paid. It was the fact that I couldn't be denied for pre-existing conditions, which was pregnancy for some people, for some women. Being pregnant previously, or having a pregnancy that was difficult was a pre-existing condition, so they couldn't get health care. Or the fact that it was hard for kids to get health care. So we extended it to 26, they could get their parents' health care. All those things were done for a reason. Okay? And the Republicans have had 15 years to make it better. So the lies, and then the idea that they're just going to give us money. Do you know what an MRI cost? It could cost $48,000. So what's next? Price control? Sounds awfully communist to me. It's never good enough with these guys. We have millions of people going into bankruptcy because of healthcare costs. But I want to show this video that Senator Ron Wyden put out actually a while ago. But this is who they disrespect, folks.
Carla Zimmerman. I just retired in June from 25 years of teaching.
My name is Bartley Armitage. I've been in Eugene, Oregon for most of 45 years. I was a union carpenter for over 30 years and still a member of the Carpenters Union.
Our current premium is $443 a month.
Through the ACA.
Through the ACA, and which is manageable for us, both retirees. However, it's going up to $2,224 a month. We are kind of in shock. That's without the subsidy. With the subsidy, it's manageable for us. We still live paycheck to paycheck, but it's manageable. The Affordable Care Act, we sort of counted on that in the interim period as retirees to sustain our health care. Without the subsidy, we honestly don't know what we're going to do.
Without the subsidy and with that kind of increase, it's like buying another house and trying to pay for two houses at the same time. Yeah, so we don't know what we're going to do exactly. We don't know how we're going to have some health insurance and be able to afford it on a monthly basis.
The thing that gets me the most is that both of us have worked our whole lives. I always had faith that our government would, when we retired.
The government did that our leaders would have a heart and try to find a way to help everyday Americans.
What I would say is this government should be about we the people, not about some.
This government should be about we the people and not about some. What a wonderful way to put it. I wish our leaders would have a heart. Folks, we're in an election year, as I said at the beginning of this thing. And I want you to think about that. And look, I know a lot of us, probably most of us watch this are Democrats. I know we have all of our issues. There's a million of them. And we're famous for litmus tests. I'm not going to get into that. As you look at the people running for office in your district, this is what it's about. Your district, okay? You're not electing Hakeem Jeffries. You're not electing Schumer. Okay, they're going to want, the Republicans are going to try and tie you. You're not electing AOC unless you live in New York. You're not electing Jared Moskowitz unless you live in Florida. Okay, you're electing a person in your district to represent you. Okay, look at them. Do they have a heart? Do they understand the people they're supposed to represent? Do they listen to you? Do they hold town halls? Are they in and amongst you? Just ask yourself that question, no matter what party it is. Is this good enough? Okay, demand better. But our leaders should have heart first. That's why I ended this three-piece, not a more deep dive into the Constitution. Who are we as a nation? And where are we with our moral compass that we're allowing this to occur in our names? That's before we talk about blowing up boats in the open ocean, not knowing who really is in those boats. That's before we talk about random things occurring overseas because Trump had a bug up his ass. You are going to elect a senator possibly, and for sure, you will elect a member of Congress because every single one of them's up for re-election or election this year. As a duty you must take seriously, you must start fighting for it now. So we have a do-nothing Congress, just like Truman did. Actually, much worse. We have a doormat Congress. That's simply a place that people walk across, be it billionaires or corporations or special interests or Donald J. Trump and his family making billions off of crypto. They wipe their feet and move on. Time to end it. And this is the year to do it. And you have that power. It's up to us. Last thing I want to talk about was just kind of the same thing. Let's talk legacy. So, Trump's legacy specifically at the end here. You know, I'm sure you heard or you saw the Wall Street Journal article about Trump's health and the bizarre things he's doing, like taking 325 milligrams of aspirin a day. So he has, and I quote, the president of the United States, nice thin blood running through his heart. He's overdosing on aspirin. I saw he just posted this. This is just from this morning, you guys. I have reported I have perfect health. The ACE, meaning 100% questions for the third straight time, is cognitive examination. Something no other president or okay. Meaningful, proven cognitive examination. Our great country cannot be run by stupid or incompetent people. President DJT. Okay. Yeah, Trump posted that himself. He literally thinks the cognitive test is an intelligence exam. And he passed it, so he's smart. And I was thinking about, so I saw a comment online about this, right? A friend was speculating about the way he has been slapping his name on things all of a sudden. I showed you the picture of course, the Trump, you saw the Trump Kennedy Center, I'm sure. I didn't show any pictures, but the Trump Kennedy Center and the Trump Institute of Peace. I'm not going to show the pictures, but did you also see like the disgusting plaques he put on previous presidents' names in the Hall of Heroes, right? There's no respect for history. But the answer to somebody said to that person, my friend said, look, he's just trying to build his legacy. Leave him alone. Let him have his legacy. And it made me start thinking about Trump's version of legacy. Because you may have seen him talking a lot about going to heaven or talking about, the future, which he never does. So, I mean, he's 79 years old. I'm 60. I think about my health and my future. I worry. Everybody does. It's natural. So I'm not going to speculate about Mr. Trump's health. That's for others to do. But I will say this. He's clearly aware that theirs comes to an end. He bulldozed the East Wing in a hurry, okay? Because he's trying to get stuff built with his name. And to Donald J. Trump, legacy means slapping gold lettering on a shitty building. Because that's all he's ever known. Trump's entire legacy of his life has been Trump Tower, Trump Golf Course, Trump Steak, Trump University. Now it's the Trump East Wing. It's the Trump Institute of Peace. It's the Trump Kennedy Center. Slapping his stupid name in gold letters on a building. And you and I have to recognize that a legacy isn't built with gold letters. A legacy is built through doing deeds, the actions. And the only way to build a true legacy is to do things that are deserving of legacy. Just like you don't just get respect, you earn respect. And to me, it's shocking to see how many people think Donald Trump's legacy is gold lettering on a building and not the deeds. And Donald Trump's legacy is going to be boats being blown up in the ocean. Donald Trump's legacy is going to be millions of Americans losing their health care. Donald Trump's legacy is going to be corruption beyond measure, as he and his family have taken billions of dollars in cryptocurrency, as he has given away pardons for free, for money, that he's created an entire industry of pardons around him without any explanation, as Congress, as we talked about, has just let it all go. Donald Trump's legacy will be one of embarrassment to this nation. And Donald Trump's first term was memorable for its failure, his second term will be a legacy builder. It's true. And that legacy is failure. And I just conclude this by saying, as I said at the top, you have the power to change it all. You got 11 months, folks. There isn't a campaign in this country right now that doesn't need you. There's a campaign in this country that doesn't need volunteers soon. A little bit now, but more later. They need your money. I'm sorry. I know people get mad when I say that. They need your money. $5, $10, especially congressional campaigns in tough places like Iowa or Montana, wherever it may be, Florida, they need your money. Okay? Because without you, this is your chance. Every day people reach out to me, Fred, what can I do? Step up is what you can do right now. You can step up right now and make a difference. Well, solo show, folks. I hope I didn't bore you to death. I can't thank you enough for being here every week. Back to our usual stuff next week. We're going to have great guests coming back, timely topics. This is the year, folks. It's the midterms. It's here. 2026 has arrived. What are you going to do? Ask yourself that question. What are you going to do? If you want to learn more about us, go to our Substack. Is absolutely the place to go right now. fbwellman.substack.com. That's the best place to find me. All of my stuff's there. All my work, links to all my social media are there. Follow us everywhere. There's a lot going on. Obviously, it's an election year for me too, so there's a lot of exciting things going on. I'd love you to follow us there at fbwellman.substack.com. In the meantime, we're right here every Friday night. The Midas Touchdown. Thank you for being a sponsor. Thank you for being a partner. Thanks for chipping in a couple of bucks. Thanks for being a subscriber. It means the world to me that we're still here. I've been on the network now over 4 years. I'm just so proud to be a part of what you guys are building together as a community. That's how we take our country back, folks, as a community. And with that, I won't bore you to death anymore. I'm Fred Wellman. This is Anonymous FP Wellman. See you next Friday.